Now, this is the picture that I presented to the architects that they got such a kick out of. Pay special attention to the orientation of the doors and windows.
Hello and welcome to my home in the city. I say in the city because it is exactly that. The neighborhood is surrounded by major arteries on each side, so you will hear noise. Although it's from a few blocks away, you will hear it as if it's right here, and it will distract you, unfortunately. Think of it as our little ocean in the city. They're like crashing waves, and here comes a wave right now. Here, and it's gone. So now I will let you in on how I transform this space. Whenever I purchase a property, in addition to making the interior as best it can be, one of the things that I think is my responsibility is to try to elevate the neighborhood as much as possible. Not that I am the know-all or end-all or be-all, but I do that in three different ways. I add as much greenery as possible. I add lighting, landscape lighting, which I'll show you later. And I also keep the yard as manicured as possible. I think that's the least you can do. I have a big-time landscape architect friend who doesn't live very far from here. In fact, I have two landscape architects friends. And Brent, who doesn't live very far from here, he actually went door to door to purchase this property and asked his neighbors if he could plant trees in their boulevard. Because who doesn't want to live on a tree-lined street? So what I did is the first thing I did was plant trees in my boulevard. And you can see them here. They're actually somewhat mature. I had them trimmed last season, but they offer a lot of privacy, and of course they add to the tree-lined streets. One other tip. The best thing for you to do is to find out what tree species is the dominant tree on that street and continue in that same vein. It will add a more unified look to the neighborhood. In addition to adding trees, I tore down what was existing and I added a retaining wall with hedges. Having a retaining wall afforded me the possibility of adding pilasters. Now, I didn't know what pilasters were or what they were called when I first purchased this property, but I did know that I saw them in Beverly Hills and I wanted them in my life. So I like them because they add an entrance before your entrance. You have kind of like this, I don't want to call it a wall, but this barrier before you get into your yard. And especially if you have a fountain in your yard, you hear that little babbling sound and you come around the corner and you're wondering what's going on in there. Come on, let me show you what's going on in here. Now, having hedges in a property or adding hedges to a property is not always the best application because it kind of gives you the impression that you're trying to wall yourself off from the community, and sometimes you are trying to wall yourself off from the community. But you really have to consider the footprint of the purchase that you purchased. You want to expand upon it and reimagine it to make it the best that it can be. Because I don't have a lot of yard space in general, I've created several little vignettes of yard spaces, and I always wanted something where I had at least one area that was green grass that was somewhat expansive. Missed the mark on this because it's not large enough to be expansive, but it is what it is, and I like it. So welcome to my little garden oasis in the city. Any city that you live in, you want to come back home and have a garden or some greenery or some escape from the hustle and bustle of the actual city. The building, as you can see, or if you can remember from the previous pictures, I completely changed the orientation of the building, adding the entrances on the side and creating as many windows on the front facade of the building as possible, just as the architects in San Luis Obispo told me to do. So I added French windows at the top and French windows at the bottom.